All right, everyone. Hello and welcome, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you're joining us from. Welcome to our first webinar event. My name is Dan Warren. I'm the Executive Director of the Sphinx Foundation for Archaeological Research, based here in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. I'm rather excited about today's webinar event, and hope you are too. I'm looking forward to your questions for the Moudiras or our affiliated project directors. If you've always wanted to ask an expert a question about archaeology, fieldwork, and nearly everything related to Egypt, now is your chance. However, before I briefly introduce our distinguished panelists, I would like to remind you that this event and other similar activities that fund archaeological research in Egypt would not be possible without the generous support of contributors like yourselves. The Sphinx Foundation for Archaeological Research, or SFAR for short, came about as a response to our ever-changing world, especially nowadays, and the increasingly limited funding sources and budgetary restrictions faced by academic institutions and museums, existing nonprofit organizations, along with rising costs, making SFAR a critical partner in ensuring that academic research, fieldwork, and conservation projects to explore and preserve the past continues unimpeded. Our mission is simple: to provide charitable funding and services for archaeological missions and research projects that further our understanding of the Egyptian past. Through collaborative partnership with archaeologists and researchers, we aim to shed light on the mysteries of the past and share these discoveries with the world. Our organization is dedicated to uncovering and preserving the rich history of Egypt. We are immensely grateful to our dear colleagues and friends in the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, the Supreme Council of Antiquities, and everyone in Egypt who so generously share their legacy and history with the world. We are so very proud of our partners, the academics and institutions carrying out this work in Egypt, the Egyptians working with our missions, such as Rais Omar, SFAR's own coordinator in Egypt, Sayed, and everyone involved in the archaeological process. Lastly, I encourage you to visit our website and social media platforms. If you would like to make a donation, please contact us at info@sphinxarchaeology.org, or in the coming month, please consider making a donation through our online portal. Our first panelist, Dr. Suzanne Onstein, is an associate professor in the Department of History at the University of Memphis, that is Memphis, Tennessee, not Egypt, and is the director of the University of Memphis Mission to Theban Tomb 16 in the West Bank, Luxor, part of the Drabal Naga necropolis. Dr. Onstein has been working in Egypt for more than 30 years. Our second panelist, Dr. Didi El-Behady, is an assistant professor in the Department of Classics, Archaeology, and Religion at the University of Missouri, and director of the Memphis Kum El Fakhri, that is Memphis in Egypt, archaeological project at Egypt's ancient capital, approximately an hour south of modern-day Cairo. Further information on both projects can be found on our website and our forthcoming digital magazine. I think at this time, I will turn it over to our panelists to introduce themselves further and their respective sites. Once they are done, I will open the discussion to the audience for questions. Please use the raise hand feature and open your camera and microphone once I've called on you. Thank you in advance for your patience, especially if this is our first webinar. So things might be a little bit rough, so I apologize. And I'll do my best to make sure we answer everyone's question. I have a few of my own here. So thank you. And I think now to Dr. Onstein and Didi.
You want me to start?
Whichever one.
Okay. Hi, I see a lot of people in the attendees list that I know, and so thank you for logging on to see a project that you probably already know a little bit about. I've given a lot of lectures about Theban Tomb 16 over the years because we've been working there since as a mission since 2008, but it was also part of an RC fellowship that I had in 2007. So it's been quite a long time that we've worked there, slowly but surely uncovering the immense wealth of secondary burials, as well as studying the decoration of the Ramesside tomb that it is. So I'm going to give you just a couple of slides to introduce the whole project, show you how beautiful it is if you haven't seen it already, and then open it up for some questions about the project or about working in Egypt. I've worked on a few different projects in Egypt before my own projects. I have some experience at different levels of working in Egypt, but I have to say I've always worked in Luxor, and I don't want to work anywhere else other than Luxor because it is my second home, and I truly love the people there and the whole spirit of the Saidi people. So let me just get my PowerPoint into the share screen mode. All right. So the tomb is called Theban Tomb 16, but it belonged to Pa-Nessi and Ta-Renu, as well as about like 150 other people. It's located in Thebes, which is, in the south. I'm sure you're all aware of where Thebes is. And specifically, it's in the Drabal Naga section of the Theban necropolis on the West Bank. So that is the most northern area of all of the monumental area, or one of the most northern, in the northern end of this New Kingdom necropolis. And so the tomb's position right here has some unique characteristics about it, including the fact that it was part of a village. As you know, the whole village of sort of old Gurna went up the sides of the mountain, and so the tomb there in the middle was in the middle of houses and people's backyard, basically. It is right near the road. You can see just the bottom of the road right there that goes to Hatshepsut's mortuary temple. So it is easily accessible, and we hope that that fact is something that's going to work in its favor in the future. If they decide to open it to the public, it will have a really high degree of accessibility for people with mobility issues, because there's no barriers to get to the tomb. You don't have to hike up a hill. People use it as a driveway already, so it's very, very flat and smooth. And then to get into the tomb, and this is before our excavations, but there's only a few steps down. And depending on how the ministry wants us to sort of complete the work or finish with the conservation, we'll be exploring ideas of how to structure that entryway into the tomb. But with just a few stairs down, many people will be able to see it who would have otherwise avoided the big hike up the hill and all of that kind of stuff. So as I said, it's originally 19th dynasty, a Ramesside tomb. Pa-Nessi and Ta-Renu were both chanters in the cult of Amun in the reign of Ramses II. The whole tomb is painted plaster, and it was reused for a very, very long time afterwards. And all of the looted coffins, the broken mummies, the things that we've excavated have really been almost a bigger part of the time frame of work. It's been much more time consuming than just the epigraphy of the walls. And it has given us such a much bigger research mandate that we are able to ask all kinds of questions about the people of ancient Thebes, and to be able to really speak to a lot of issues that get overlooked, especially in the Theban tomb region, because Theban tombs are so beautiful and people are rightfully a little obsessed with documenting, talking about the beautiful tombs. In fact, myself, as a graduate student, I read an article in Kemet that basically said, there are a lot of tombs that we know about, but are unpublished and unstudied. And before we dig up a whole bunch of new ones, maybe we should focus on accurately describing, documenting, and studying the ones that are already at risk. And that really resonated with me, and I made it sort of my internal goal to work in a Theban tomb. First, because they're beautiful, but also because of the necessity of documenting these before they're gone, before they're destroyed, either through natural forces or human action. And the tomb itself really demonstrates how both of those factors are a problem, because the tomb was looted, all those secondary burials broken up and, torn asunder, and the walls similarly had been hacked out in a few places, clearly for the art market and not through vandalism or occupation, but very specifically to sell. So here's our tomb owners, Panesi and Taurenu. You can see how beautiful that Ramesside painting is. And one of the things that draws people to the tomb, both for academic study, but also the art market, is the fact that they are indeed very beautiful. So it's a blessing and a curse in a way. Some very important scenes in the tomb relate to Amenhotep I and Ahmose-Nefertari as deified individuals. Hundreds of years after they lived, they were worshipped at a mortuary temple that was really right across the road. Like, you can see it, you could have seen it from the tomb's door. It is no longer visible above ground. It was excavated in the late 1800s, but it is essentially in an antiquities area that's sort of set apart on the other side of the road. So someday somebody will re-excavate Spiegelberg's work there and hopefully tell us a little bit more about it. We have also important scenes like this one of Karnak Temple. So people who are interested in temple personnel, this tomb is really a key thing, because Pa-Nessi and his brother right here were chanters, which was a really unusual title for men. And here they are at the head of a procession, clapping and sort of announcing the arrival of the god in his form here, a ram-headed effigy vase. And so people would have heard the chanting, come out and been able to see the god and pay their respects to Amun, even from their village. So the looting unfortunately impacted many of the really nice scenes. There's obviously some damage, and there's a lot of pitting in the plaster everywhere from just natural processes. But this little corner right here, you can see even like the knife marks. So even outside the bounds of where they were trying to remove the scene, they damaged stuff because they were not careful. They were probably working in a hurry. So damage to the walls, as well as damage to all of those looted remains. And there was minimal work done here in the late 1920s, by the French, who did epigraphy. And so at least for the first of the two rooms, we have some epigraphic record of what happened. And we think this looting was probably done in the 70s, because there are pictures of the tomb intact, more or less, from the 60s. And the 70s, of course, is when the UNESCO World Heritage Treaty came into effect, and signatory nations were not supposed to be buying antiquities after that, at least in only very controlled ways. So there's sort of probably a rush to get things out of Egypt. So this scene is probably somewhere out in the art world, in a private collection, and it went right there. The secondary burials all broken up. These are some fragments. So just to give you an idea of sort of the massive amounts, there's literally bags and bags and bags and bags and bags of the cartonnage, the bones, the mummy wrappings, etc. So it's been a real job to try and figure out what is happening in the tomb. There's some Shabti pieces, all different kinds, mostly third intermediate period in date. All of the secondary stuff really agrees internally with a third intermediate period date. And the sad state of the mummies when we first encountered them, all torn up, and the floor was literally this sort of brownish orange color from the linen of the wrappings, the unwrapped parts. So you've probably seen some presentations or articles about our work on the human remains. I'm not going to go into that, but I want to stop there with this, because this is where my mind was blown as an Egyptologist, because in doing this research and working with specialists from a lot of disciplines, from physical anthropology, paleopathology, and radiology, all this kind of stuff, I began to realize how much we are missing in terms of understanding the past, because past generations of Egyptologists, although mummies are an icon of ancient Egypt, a lot of Egyptologists are not that interested in human remains. And so I felt like this was something that I could really contribute to the field and to bring these things to light and to make it more visible and more common in talking about Theban tombs, to prioritize those secondary burials and not just sort of leave them for an appendix at the end of the book about the beautiful painted remains. So I think in general, because I have an anthropology background before I started doing Egyptology, I was in a frame of mind that I could prioritize doing that kind of work and not be sad about it. I was really very excited to be able to do that. And I had colleagues, telling me that they were very sorry that I had all of this stuff to go through, all these looted human remains. And because whole mummies, you're not allowed to unwrap them, you can't do visual examinations. The looted remains, although they are terrible and it's sad that it happened to them, it allows us a lot of avenues of investigation that would not have been open to us if everything were perfect. And so it's truly like a lemons to lemonade situation of being able to take these unfortunately nameless people and restore some version of history to them, to give them back an identity, even as a group, if not individually, that is important and that informs us about the history of the whole Theban necropolis. So, should I just turn it over to Didi, or do we want to take questions after each one of us? How do you want to do this?
I think it would be a good idea to pass it on to Didi and then just
Okay.
open up to everybody. That way you can
Okay.
both answer some of the overlapping questions.
Great.
Awesome. Well, hi guys. Thank you so much for coming. Admittedly, my site is not as beautiful as Suzanne's. Um, Beautiful archaeologically, but we do not have any nicely colored painted uh, reliefs or anything like that. But I will share quickly my screen. All right, everything look okay? Perfect. So my project is the Memphis Qom al-Fakhri Archaeological Project. We're still very much kind of in the early stages of it. It just, we had our first season in 2023, in the fall of 2023. So we're really still kind of new with this all. But some background, of course, Memphis is one of the most recognizable cities really in the entire world. We know that it was the first capital of unified Egypt, founded pretty early on, we think, right, by this legendary King Menes. But we also know that it was the capital of Old Kingdom, Egypt, and it was continuously settled beginning in the 3rd millennium up until the 5th century AD. So very little is known about the city itself. Unfortunately, it's one of these major sites in Egypt with like a lot of profound importance. But at the same time, very little is actually known about the city because there has been a lack of systematic and continuous excavation over the years at Memphis. So Memphis is comprised of a few different mounds. The mound that we are focusing on is called Qom al-Fakhri, and here's I'll give you a better view of it in a second. But also for those that don't know, I'm guessing most do, Cairo is right here, and Memphis is not too far away, around a 45-minute, if even that, drive from Cairo. So if we go from outer space, we zoom into Egypt. this is Memphis, the archaeological area of Memphis. And specifically, this area right here is Qom al-Fakhri, so this part over here. So not a massive site in general, but it's the mound that has the oldest in situ remains found at Memphis to date. So it's really important because we hope to find out more about early Memphis. We know so much about New Kingdom and post New Kingdom Memphis, but we don't know much about Old Kingdom Memphis or even Middle Kingdom Memphis. So that's where we're really working. But the site itself was found accidentally because they were doing road work in the 1950s. And you can actually kind of see part of the road work. This area is kind of a, can you guys also see my mouse? Okay, perfect. But this area right here was kind of plowed through because they were creating a new road, and then they uncovered a first intermediate period cemetery as well as a Middle Kingdom settlement. So there has been some work that has been done over the years. Most notably was ERA's work in 2011, where they excavated part of the Middle Kingdom settlement. Egyptians from the Antiquity Service, also in the 1950s and 80s, were able to excavate small portions of the first intermediate period cemetery, or actually pretty large portions, but they weren't published, as well as small portions of the Middle Kingdom settlement. So really our main goal with Qom al-Fakhri is first and foremost, we're not touching the cemetery, at least for now, but we want to excavate more of the Middle Kingdom settlement. You can actually see here, funny enough, these are some of our excavation squares from our 2023 season. You can see the backfill. So yeah, first thing is to continue excavations on the Middle Kingdom settlement. It is much larger than what has been excavated so far, so we're pushing north and west. The other really big question, kind of the $1 million question, is where is Old Kingdom Memphis? So we know that Memphis was the capital of Egypt in the Old Kingdom. However, pottery really, for the most part, has been found, Old Kingdom pottery has been found in secondary deposits. It's never been found in situ. And the really interesting thing is in 2023, we actually were able to uncover for the first time in situ layers from Old Kingdom Memphis. Most of the pottery dated to the 5th and 6th dynasty, but we also found stuff from the 4th dynasty as well. So it seems like Qom al-Fakhri could have been the location of the Old Kingdom capital of Memphis. So just some kind of pictures. We are an American Egyptian mission. Starting pretty recently, every mission that it opens up in Egypt now must be a foreign mission, at least, must be a joint mission between that foreign university, so in my case, University of Missouri, as well as the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities. It's directed by myself, and my Egyptian co-director is Dr. Ilham Ahmed, who is the Director General of Memphis, and the Assistant Director is Kelly Ann Diamond, who is based out of Villanova University. So here is our team, at least part of our team in the very kind of early start. You can see the site it looks like not much at all. But we did a initial survey and kind of a test excavation in 2023. And we found some really interesting things. For example, this picture right here of Louisa, one of my team members, and I, we are now at Old Kingdom levels down in the sondage. And we actually found, very surprisingly, the beginnings of a skeleton that, based on the pottery, seems to date to the late Old Kingdom period. So just some more kind of pictures. Also, I should mention right here, there are ants that once we got really deep into the ground, ants that want nothing more than to just bite you, and they come in hordes out of the ground. So it was a very painful ordeal excavating some of the Old Kingdom remains. But yeah, some kind of background about me. I've excavated in a few different places. So Tel Edfu, I did my PhD at University of Chicago. So Dr. Nadine Moller's excavation in Tel Edfu was my first excavation in Egypt. And I went for, I think, 4 seasons at that point. Really interesting. And it's especially a settlement excavation, which is what I was most interested in. But I've also worked at Hermopolis, looking at a New Kingdom temple, as well as Asasif and Dera Bahri, looking at tombs from the Middle Kingdom. And like I mentioned, our team is nearly half Egyptian, half American or other. But we also have amazing Egyptian workmen. So these are all from the local village of Mitrahina. And we have also guftis that help us excavate. These are really incredible excavators. I think I learned so much from them. They've been excavating since they were pretty much children. But Siraj, Yassine, and I think, oh, and of course, can't forget Shahait as well. So we have 3 guftis with us. And then the rest of the team, Katie, Dan, Kelly, and Louisa here. So I think that's the main stuff that I kind of wanted to cover, and of course, open to questions. Excited to hear them.
Okay. I guess we will switch over and I'll muddle my way through this. I didn't have a dress rehearsal, so I apologize but anybody like to start with a question for either one of our panelists, please go ahead now.
Nobody ever wants to be first, but don't worry. Really, you can ask anything. We sort of wanted to do this format so that it could be informal. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, what is the pottery sequence of Old Kingdom or late 20th dynasty, or it doesn't have to be that specific. Dan, you said you had some questions, so maybe
Yeah, I'll
start on something.
I think I'll start with one that you and I had talked about a little bit in advance, is what is it like working in Egypt? I'll let both of you take this.
Didi, you want to start?
Sure. Working in Egypt is, I think, in many ways amazing. The archaeology is amazing. The people are amazing. Also, I should preface this with saying that I'm Egyptian American, so born in Egypt and fluent in Arabic. So in a weird way, it feels, not in a weird way, it feels very much like home to me, right? Because it is my second home. I think the archaeology, like I said, is very incredible. The people that you're working with. The only kind of difficulty where you have to plan ahead is with getting permits each year and getting security clearance, which we were talking about this a little before this webinar, how difficult it is. So you have to plan, especially if you're in academia, you have to plan ahead by around 8 to 9 months in order to get your security clearance in time. But overall, it's been, I think, a wonderful experience. I think my being able to speak Arabic has really allowed me to really connect to the workmen, as well as our Rice, for example, Rice Omar, and our Egyptian colleagues, which has been, I think, incredible. They've been so excited to be able to finally speak kind of their native language to the archaeologists. So it's been an amazing experience. And of course, I'm very much kind of tied to the remains themselves and tied to the cultural heritage. So I'll leave it at that and give it over to you, Suzanne.
Yeah, well, just sort of going off that, I studied Arabic in college. I'm not Egyptian, obviously, but I studied Fusha in my undergraduate years. And so when I first went to Egypt, knowing Fusha, knowing how to read Arabic helped a lot just in terms of navigating whether I was working or not. But also in sort of being able to build relationships with Egyptians over many, many years, working in Luxor over and over again and visiting over and over again means that the language skills help me make sort of more a firm foundation of relationships. And even though I'm not fluent, the conversational kinds of things are easy, and all the work vocabulary and this kind of stuff um, makes it a really good experience because I have a sort of fuller understanding and respect for the lives of people around me, whether they're working with me or not, but also just to access information that my Egyptian colleagues have, like the other people working in Luxor. Most of the archaeology being done in Luxor is being done by Egyptian missions, the ministry and Zahi Hawas's teams and so on. And to be able to talk with them uh, in sort of part Egyptian, Arabic, and part English and whatever is really rewarding because it's a whole other level of Egyptology that is not well represented in our publications. And conferences are difficult for Egyptians to travel to, and it's difficult for us to always go to Egypt for the conferences because it takes me a full day to get to Egypt from where I live, like literally 3 flights, layovers, a full day of traveling. So unlike Europeans who can pop over on a 4-hour flight maximum, there's a lot more that goes into getting there for us. So when I'm there 2 to 3 months, I get to have these deeper relationships with people, and working in the same place over and over has been, as rewarding as doing the academic part of the work. It's just, I can't imagine not doing it now, not seeing my friends and not being there for part of the year. We have a couple of questions.
Yeah, we had one question come through the chat, and it's what type of prostheses were found in TT16?
Well, they're not prostheses in the sense of like of things that people used when they were alive. They were things that were amended to the body after death to sort of perfect them for the afterlife. So the article we published, Prosthesis for the Afterlife, sort of reflects that. And so in some cases, we have those dummy limbs, like something in the shape of an arm, but that's actually just a bundle of sticks. And because everything is broken up, we don't know how it would have looked like attached to the mummy. But there are other examples of this. We're not the first people to notice these kind of bundles that were put into a burial to take the place of missing body parts. But we also have this really interesting phenomena that is not well published of basically a palm stick right through the spinal column, and it sort of flattens out and straightens the spinal column, which should usually be an S curve, to provide that sort of spring or bounce in for your core stability, right? And so straightening it out after death, we found several examples of it, and it's unclear exactly what it's doing, but some of the individuals that had it had scoliosis or arthritis. And so it may have been a way of sort of fixing somebody for the afterlife so that the problem that they suffered from that would have caused a lot of pain was sort of symbolically fixed. So you stand up straight, the whole Jed pillar stability hieroglyph is supposedly, a vertebral column. So there's that. And those are really the two main prostheses or additions. The one interesting one that we published separately was a woman whose pelvis had been tied together, that during the mummification process, the pelvis, the two parts are joined by ligaments. Mummification usually doesn't go near this area. It's usually, further up the organs, not the pelvis, down in the pubic region. And it was tied together with a linen string or a rope, a piece of fabric, tying it together. So what we hypothesized was that this was a woman who had died in childbirth. It was a young woman's pelvis. It was just the pelvis, not the rest of the body or anything. And so they felt the need, probably in removing a baby, that maybe they ripped her up a little bit and they wanted to restore the stability of her pelvis so that in the afterlife she's kind of a whole person. And that sort of idea of fertility, being able to conceive a child and everything is important for ancient Egyptian women religiously and all of that. But it really shows the amount of care that they put into the mummification process in trying to make people their best selves, so to speak, for the afterlife.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other questions? For some reason, people should be able to launch both video and audio. I'm not sure why, because it worked in the dress rehearsal. It worked in the practice session, so I don't know why. If you're not able to do that, I apologize. Please do send us your questions via the chat. I
I
think,
see one of my team members is actually an attendee. Liz Warkentine was working with us during the Egyptian Revolution. We got to Egypt in January 2011 and left Cairo just 2 days before everything went down. Hey. And so Liz was with us in that first season of excavation, and she was there when we uncovered a very significant wall fragment with the goddess Hathor on it. So it was a really great way to start the whole excavation experience, even though it was like literally during the revolution. It was early February. So you do not see any audio for video share on your end. Dan, can you maybe, let me see.
wondering.
Brian says.
That is frustrating. Okay, let's see.
Well, there's a question in the Q&A while you're looking around. What is the most surprising find on a site you've excavated? Let DD take that one.
Yeah. So I'll do first then Memphis, and then I'll do ever. But I think the most surprising, at least at Memphis, it was really interesting because we were going through, so we're in the Middle Kingdom settlement, and we wanted to create a sondage or I guess a small square going down to see the stratigraphy and see what else lies on the site, especially if there's any Old Kingdom remains. So we're going through the Middle Kingdom layers, no issues there. Then we hit a huge amount of sand that dates to, well, we're not 100% sure what it dates to, but it splits the Middle Kingdom from the Old Kingdom remains. So it seems like it could have been a late Old Kingdom or maybe even first intermediate period. One of maybe two things, either kind of dune encroachment coming in from the Western Desert, or Nile flood that came in quickly to the site and came back out and deposited that sand. But I think after that, so the workmen were telling me, they called me over and they were like, hey, we've hit sand. I think we're at the kind of the original sand layer. So the idea is that Memphis was probably built on an island, and they thought that we had to hit that, the very end. And at this point, we were only in the Middle Kingdom. And of course, I started panicking, right? Because there should be this capital in the Old Kingdom. We even know that there's early dynastic remains from Memphis, so it didn't make sense. So, anyways, like let's go through it. Let's continue. Took them a bit of time. We went down, and then we found that the skeleton, which we were not really thinking at all would happen. And not only we found the skeleton, right, but we also found the pottery around it dating to the Old Kingdom. So I think that was the most surprising find from our work at Memphis. And obviously, we have to do a lot of work in the future on this. We're bringing in a bioarchaeologist in order to properly excavate as well as remove the skeletal remains so we can continue going down and also learn, did we hit a cemetery of some sort? Is it the really interesting thing is the skeleton actually had a layer of plaster above it. So was the skeleton underneath a floor in a house? So is this a settlement context? Is it a cemetery? So I think that was the kind of most surprising thing. But I will have to say the most interesting and surprising find was I was a PhD student working at Tel Edfu, and we were excavating some New Kingdom layers. We were actually excavating a villa, and then all of a sudden we hit a ancestor shrine, which was absolutely fantastic. And we found some really cool. We found an ancestor bust, for example. But this seems to be the area of the villa where the ancient inhabitants would go and kind of pray to and invoke their ancestors. So it was like you read about it, but then actually finding it in real life was absolutely crazy. Admittedly, it was very hectic because as soon as we hit that and we started to come up with different statues and stuff, the ministry people arrived as well as the police. And it's because any big finds like this and any material can't stay obviously overnight at the site itself or could be looted. So we have to take it to a magazine and there's a whole process that goes into that. Thankfully, I was not the director of that. I was just a student, so I got to kind of see how things take place. But I think that was the most interesting discovery, and I'm sure I will probably never have that experience ever again. Especially settlement contexts are not as flashy as excavating a tomb, for example. But settlement contexts are so important because they tell us about kind of the everyday lives of people, which are really not well known in Egypt as we do know about the elites as well as the royals. So yeah, very long answer there.
I think the most surprising thing that I found, I mean, the pelvis that was tied together was wild because I've never heard of that in any publication ever before. But honestly, I mean, it was part of the human remains. And this year, we had probably the most surprising thing of my whole experience in the tomb was that we found a whole secret room. Been working in this tomb since 2007, and because the walls of the tomb had been conserved in like the 50s, there were big sections where they were covered in mud plaster in modern times by the Antiquities Organization. And I thought they were just to fill in places where plaster had fallen off. And so in doing the conservation this year, we started to remove that old muna, or the mud, the plaster. We realized that behind one section of this was an entire modern limestone block wall. And so we got permission to take down the wall, and lo and behold, there's a whole other room behind the wall. That seems to be part of the secondary burial phenomena of reusing these tombs. And because we found it, of course, at the end of the season, we did not excavate it at all, but it might be a shaft that goes down. It has artifacts in it. There's a skull right on the surface and a piece of plaster from the ceiling from obviously at some point in the construction of this little annex. but we still have a lot more to figure out in the tomb, and that secret room was quite a surprise. And so one of the other questions, what is the future plans for TT16? Secret room. We're going to continue our conservation efforts, and Dan here is our epigrapher working on final versions of the epigraphy. Although as we do the conservation and more of the wall scenes become sort of better in terms of being able to see them, we may, update those drawings. But Dan is doing a great job with the epigraphy, and the conservation is underway. Secret room to excavate, so we still got a few years left of work, inshallah, with funding from the Sphinx Foundation and beautiful donors, and who knows what other things that we'll be able to uncover in the secret room, but you'll have to check back regularly to find out.
Okay, so I double checked things, and for some reason, one of the boxes that's supposed to be ticked is not ticked properly, which was in the practice. So I'm not sure why that changed between the practice and the regular launch. But that is, I believe, the reason, and I can't reset it without closing the session. So that said, I logged in, and you may be able to use audio to ask a question. If you cannot, please just put them in the window. And again, I apologize. This is not what I thought we were going to have, but best made plans.
So from the chat questions, Liz, your Hathor piece will be going back in the wall. And yes, another room. I'll tell you about it. I'll give you a call this weekend. There's
All
a
right.
call for Dee Dee in there.
Yes, I see a few questions about water issues at the site. And I thought I saw also a question by Brian asking about how deep we've actually excavated. So I quickly put this slide in. Let me show you guys for a second. So I've been talking about a sondage for a bit. What actually is this sondage? So this is a Middle Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom remains. So these are a few walls from the Middle Kingdom. And the idea is we wanted to do a kind of a smaller, in a way, test trench to go down and see what we find pretty much. However, we went 2.5 meters down is when we started to hit Old Kingdom remains. And the really cool thing about this model is in a second, it will zoom out and you'll get to see kind of the full length of the sondage, which is pretty crazy. And this is where the ants, those devil ant things were. So this is how far we actually had to excavate in order to reach the Old Kingdom remains. So around 2.5 meters. And yes, the groundwater. Thank you guys for asking about that. So Memphis is incredibly difficult, and most sites in the Delta are incredibly difficult because of high groundwater in Egypt. We encountered the groundwater. So we did augering after we entered the kind of Old Kingdom phase, where we found the skeletal remains. We did a kind of a test hole inside the sondage to see how far kind of levels of occupation continue. And it seems like for another 2.5 meters. However, 1 meter down, so 3.5 meters from the Middle Kingdom layers when we hit the groundwater, unfortunately. Meaning that most Old Kingdom remains are probably going to be in the groundwater. The only good thing that is going for us is groundwater goes up and down based on the season, so based on the time of year. So there's usually a 1 to 2 meter either rise or kind of contraction of the water, and for that we can kind of dictate when we're going to excavate. But at the same time, there's no getting around it. I think we're going to have a pump in the future and be pumping out water in order to continue excavations, which is very pricey, takes a long time. But that kind of comes with the territory of excavating at Memphis. But for now, at least we know that the Middle Kingdom remains are safe from the groundwater. It's just kind of the earlier parts of ancient Memphis that we're gonna, I think, run into some issues with.
We have a comment from Ahmed El-Shabrawi about training and internships for conservators in Egypt. And then we have one from Christine Darrow asking about the cylinders under the Pyramid of Khafre. Which one would you prefer to take?
Definitely the conservation internship. Most of that is handled by the ministry. Like we have a conservator who is in charge of determining the sort of the methods and the plan for conservation, but we have Egyptian partners who are inspectors and technicians. So if you're a ministry employee, then it would be possible to speak to the Taftish people to find out what opportunities exist for conservation, like wherever you live. And all of that is managed outside of our control, really. We're happy to do it. We're happy to include people, but we rely on our partners in the ministry to advise and help us with that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think so. We haven't really run into the need to have a conservator on site yet. But I think similar to what Suzanne is saying, since it is a joint Egyptian-American mission, kind of the Egyptian side takes on the hiring or the training of Egyptians. However, one of our goals is giving opportunity to other Egyptians, right? So it's definitely something that if you're interested in, definitely contact us, and we'll try to figure something out if it's even possible. But it's definitely something that in the future we want to add more Egyptians, conservators, archaeologists, so that they can get more kind of more background and more experience with excavations, especially with a settlement setting. And I also see a question that is a great question. It's the million-dollar question of why does security clearance take so long? And we would love, if we had the answer to that, things would be so much better. We have no idea. I think it's the situation is usually so there's two, I'll go through kind of what happens, which is you apply each year to the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquity, your permit. You say what you're going to do for this next season, who's going to be on your team. Usually the permit gets accepted for the most part with maybe some revisions in 1 or 2 months. And then things get sent out to the security clearance, which is a black hole of you don't know if it's going to come in 2 months or in my case now, I was just talking to Suzanne and Dan about this. It's taken 10 months and we still have not heard anything back. And it's very difficult, right? Because when you're an academic job in the United States, you have very limited time when you can excavate. So you're on a different schedule and the security clearance is on a different schedule. So it's difficult. And I think that's I will say the only challenging aspect. I mean, there's many things, right? But this is one of the main challenging aspects of working in Egypt. I know I have colleagues here that are classicists, and they are able, for example, to add students to their permits in Italy or in Greece really early on. I mean, really quickly versus for us, if a student says, I want to come and join your excavation, I have to be like, you have to let me know in a year because I already sent in the paperwork. And they don't have to get the permissions, at least in Greece and Italy like we do. So there's complications of working in Egypt, but to kind of answer your question, we have no idea why it takes so long and we wish that it could be expedited.
Yeah, that unpredictability is really it's hard to convey exactly the whole feeling of the situation to anybody who's not living it, honestly.
I think I'm just going to briefly respond to Christine Darrow's comment and just say that the leading experts that specialize in the Giza Plateau have made their ideas very clear on this issue, and I'm happy to pass on their comments specifically addressing this if you reach out to me. And then I think there's a shout out from Rasha Salaman. If any other questions, if not, I'll.
What is the fate of the human remains that have been found? They are still in the tomb. Well, except for very few teeth that were not associated with a skull, or like we didn't take them out of a body. They were loose teeth in the excavation. We got permission to do stable isotope testing on them. We have encountered sort of issue after issue in the past of getting that done, like which labs are approved. And then the lab decided they didn't want to do it after initially saying they would. The ministry, I believe, just purchased a machine able to do stable isotope testing. And so we hope that those teeth, which are in Cairo at Lazuli, the scientific arm of the ministry offices, we hope that those will be approved for stable isotope testing in the future, but everything else is in the tomb where they were found. They're now neatly sorted into locus and everything, so that if we wanted to go back and look at a specific area, we could take just the bones from that area or whatever. But they're exactly, in the tomb where they were meant to be, and there's no plan to move them. So unless something with the ministry changes in the future about it, there's no reason to move them out of the tomb.
Susan, I should also ask you a question now that you're saying this. If the ministry, because I know a lot of tombs are getting opened up in Luxor now for tourists to come and visit. If that happens, then what happens with the remains?
Well, they're all in the corridor.
Okay, so kind of outside.
So there would be a metal gate door over it. I mean, you have to have something for air exchange still, so it would probably be, like an iron gate with chicken wire sort of attached to it, but one that would prevent people from getting in there to mess with it, but still allow them to stay there, allow visitors to continue to access the tomb. But it also would be kind of unsafe to let people into that corridor anyway. It's very uneven. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people have hit their heads on the rocks protruding from the ceiling. So there was never a chance that that part was going to be open to the public, really. So just putting a gate on it, they can still stay there. There are other tombs in the valley where there's stuff stored in places that aren't accessible, but they're still open to the public.
Awesome.
Liz made a comment in the chat. People are too tall, which is true. The ceiling is kind of low. So we had one graduate student. She was almost 6 feet tall, and she bumped her head all the time. But I am only 5'4", and so there's rarely any place in the tomb where I have to duck. But men who wear their baseball caps all the time in the tomb, they have to take the baseball caps off so that they can see exactly what that clearance is without bumping the ceiling.
Cool. I see in the questions, Brian saying, if you need a ceramicist, let me know. I will be getting in contact with you, actually. We are honestly, I will say that when I was a student excavating at these other sites, I understood the importance of ceramics, but I never really appreciated it until we got to Memphis and we're working with so many different time periods. Um, so I am so appreciative now of people that actually specialize in pottery, and we need them so much because this is how you can tell what period you're in. So yes, I will definitely get in contact with you.
So I guess I'll ask a couple last questions if that's okay. Um, the one I had thrown in here was kind of where do you see, since we covered a few things that I had as talking points, where do you see the field of Egyptology and Egyptian archaeology moving in the future?
It's a big question.
Is a big question.
In my mind, inclusivity is
Yeah.
Yeah.
a major, well, actually a major shift, at least even in my lifetime. So yeah.
Yeah. I think during the pandemic, there was a ton of attention to decolonizing everything, kind of. And so I think out of that, even if those conversations don't have the kind of sort of wind in their sails that they did during the pandemic, that there's a lot more awareness. And, the whole generations of Egyptologists younger than me are learning Arabic to be able to consider the community in which these monuments exist, and sort of attention to Egyptians as stakeholders in history. And I think these are really important directions.
Yeah, I think definitely more diversity, more accessibility. I think at least for the American side of Egyptology, for the longest time, it was Egyptology was one of the kind of elitist majors or fields that you can really go into. So making it more accessible to definitely a larger population of students, for example, that are interested. But as Suzanne was talking about, also allowing Egyptians to get back to a place where they feel important and that this is their cultural heritage and that they have some kind of control over it. I won't say control as in a bad way, but I think if we look at the history of Egyptology, throughout most of the history, it's always Egyptians that are left out in the story, which left out of most stories, which is particularly ironic. And I hope, and this is something that I'm pushing for and trying to find a solution to, that it becomes mandatory to learn Arabic for your PhD in Egyptology. The fact that we're still working in a very colonial way by making you learn French and German. Yes, for publications, it's great, but when does it end? When is it going to become a priority for students to actually be able to communicate with the workmen and with their colleagues? I think it's only then that we can have true collaboration in Egyptology. So I'm trying to work with my university here. Any Egyptology students I get, mandatory, no questions asked, you must know Arabic. You must learn some Egyptian Arabic in order to be at least conversationalist. Have a conversation in Egypt with the workmen. You cannot just point at the workmen and like mine to them, because honestly, I've seen it firsthand now. When I started working at Memphis, the workmen are so excited, like genuinely so excited, because they can actually interact with me. They can talk to me. They feel so proud that an Egyptian is actually directing a site, not only just an Egyptian, but an Egyptian woman. It's like so foreign to them. So I've seen how important it is. And it's something that definitely has to change in Egyptology. It's to the point that I'm thinking, maybe, I have no promises here, that maybe I'll start something where I do like YouTube videos of like different topics each week of, you can say blah, 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 blah in the field for a brush or for a trowel, or like the kind of the basic language. is there. I am not an Arabic instructor at all, but it's definitely something that there has to be a change that happens at some point or another. And I think now is I think a good time for that. So kind of a long-winded answer right there.
I think I'll ask you both one final question if we have no more from the audience. And that is, what does it mean to you and your mission to be part of the Sphinx Foundation family?
I'm incredibly grateful that it exists, and nonprofits have always been part of the landscape of doing Egyptology. All the way back to the Egypt Exploration Society, and all the local societies, in addition to sort of big national institutes, are really what help us talk about the work to a wider audience, to get people excited about history, whether they're able to travel to Egypt ever or not. Being able to present people, a little piece of that work is made possible by nonprofits like the Sphinx Foundation. And so to be part of one that's actually like really focused on Egyptian inclusivity and being part of the work on the ground and not just a check is really important, because understanding work in Egypt is complicated, and without sort of the admin understanding what needs to happen, what receipts can happen and can't happen, all of these things, I think the Sphinx Foundation is a really good position to provide that kind of guidance and help.
Yeah, I'm kind of piggybacking off of what Suzanne said. Incredibly grateful, and really excited about the future. We know that there's very limited funding opportunities, unfortunately, in Egyptology, and now in general, with the NEH, NSF, and all of these kind of grants being in jeopardy with the current political climate in the United States. This has become, SFAR has become even more important. And one thing that I'll also highlight is, as Suzanne said, it's not just simply a check, but Dan and the team actually understand how Egypt operates, which is very important, because I go absolutely crazy here at the university when they ask me for receipts that are just simply impossible to produce. Or tell me, like, make the workmen write in English. I'm like, that's not their native language. I don't know what to do.
They want to give us a credit card.
Exactly.
Put it on the university credit card. The fruit vendor takes credit cards, really?
Venmo, maybe PayPal, something like that.
Yeah.
But the other really great thing about SFAR is there's a push also to publish, to do things like these webinars, do lectures, to make, in the end, Egyptology much more accessible. It's no longer just, the approach is not just write out a check and you forget about it and kind of take the credit that you funded this project or projects. But instead, it's very hands-on, and I think really pushing us in the right direction, like I said, to make the material that we actually excavate or work on much more accessible to a wider audience, not just a scholarly audience, but also kind of people that are just interested in Egyptology in general. So I really appreciate that. It's different than a lot of other funding institutions in some ways. So.
Yeah, and I think at this point, I'll just interject and say that I think at this point in time, in particular, the focus of the Sphinx Foundation is on smaller grants to perhaps have a wider net in the future to help a lot of different projects in a number of ways. And also to reiterate the fact that Sphinx Foundation is very much so interested in its impact in the communities in Egypt and with the Egyptians themselves. I think, as we know, the make or break scenario is whether or not a team works, and whether the workmen who have trained for generations and are quite honestly experts in what they do are able to, pay for things in their own lives and continue to be part of this kind of reciprocal world between both Egyptian and foreign archaeologists and everyone in Egypt that works within, I guess you could say, the world of archaeology that makes it function and function well. It was not as eloquent as I wanted it to be, but anyways. Okay.
Well, I think just the fact that we're taking into consideration not the needs of the archaeology, but the needs of the people that are getting paid doing the archaeology, which is not me, but the workmen, the foremen, the drivers, the everybody who makes it possible for me to do that as a foreigner coming to Egypt, and needing help before I'm actually in the country.
Mhm. And I think Brian Smith had a shout out to somebody that's instrumental with the Silsila project, Mona Ali.
Mhm.
There we have it.
Yeah. There are so many great Egyptians who deserve recognition, and there's, literally not enough time and space right now to do it. But we really do appreciate and love our colleagues and want them to have success and financial security and all of that. So
All right, well, we're at about 12:16, so unless there are any other final questions, I think I will draw it to a close.
okay.
Right?
Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, thank you so much to everyone who attended. And I'm going to remind everyone that there are more events planned for this coming year, and especially in the forthcoming months. So please like and follow us to keep in touch and consider making a donation to the Sphinx Foundation. Again, thank you for joining us and have a wonderful rest of your Friday. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you to both of our guests. My goodness, thank you to both of our guests. It would not be possible without you. Thank you so much.